I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top-secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
My mission is to inform viewers
Who want to get to the truth within the unknown.
on all topics, controversial, bizarre, and taboo.
Taught generations how to view the world in a positive way.
Yes, I have.
I know that, and your humility is the part that's really exciting.
Interviewing movers and shakers, agitators and muckrakers,
But that doesn't answer my question. That is all I'm answering.
With me, Terry Harrison, as your guide.
In preparing this broadcast, CBS News commissioned a survey by the Opinion Research Corporation into public attitudes toward homosexuality. We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution.
It's straight ahead. I want to invite you on a one-time only special trip to be one of the first people to sail to Cuba in 50 years. With interior cabins for a week-long, 5-star luxury cruise ship voyage around the entire island of Cuba with multiple port calls starting at only $16.98. Be among the first in 50 years to see Cuba while it's still the Cuba that people talk about. This is Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, on the Progressive Radio Network in New York, and on utalk.us and various affiliates here and there. I want to talk a little bit today, and that's why we have probably the most articulate and really the greatest historian about all things LGBT. LMNOP, because, of course, the letters keep getting added on and on. And in a moment, we're going to take a look at some classic 60 Minutes news piece on what they called the homosexuals from 1967. And if you're younger, you're going to be appalled and shocked. But interestingly enough, in the political climate we are now living, there is one side of the world that is bringing back this kind of ethos, or lack of ethic, if you will. But first I want to introduce Andy Sacher. He is the executive director of The Lavender Effect. You are the go-to guys. You're creating an entire video library of all things gay, of the history. And I believe gay is actually real, is it not?
It's as real as we are.
Yes.
No, the Lavender Effect is taking the lead from Steven Spielberg, who started the Shoah Foundation, and he documented 52,000 Holocaust survivors to show that that really happened.
Yeah.
So we're taking his lead. I had the benefit of working with him in the mid-'90s and saw that there's an opportunity for LGBT people to be documented for all time.
I saw him in a restaurant once.
Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Impressive.
But you actually worked with him. But this is the thing, is you come from Jerry Bruckheimer, you come from Disney. Just to sort of throw your cred out there, you designed Disney's Hollywood Adventure, California Adventure, Hollywood Edition, and all of this stuff. So not only are you an Imagineer, but you realized that telling the story of LGBT people around the world, and if you figure that 10% rule, which is the standard rule of thumb, about 10% of the global human population, that's about 800 million people. That's a very important story then to tell. There's an audience for that.
800 million people that are misunderstood for the most part.
Yeah. Speaking of video, before 60 Minutes became what is called 60 Minutes, it was a CBS News Reports. And this is 1967. Dick Nixon is at the helm. Things are rather swell for a lot of people. And they do this report called The Homosexuals. And we're going to show you some real footage of this. It's rather appalling, especially when it comes from the network. And note the propaganda. Because when you're a reporter and you're making these statements and these claims, well, all the people in America at that time sat and watched TV together. It wasn't just pulling it like on Netflix when you feel like it. So this is prime time. Check this out.
The homosexuals
with CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace.
Homosexuality is an enigma. Even in this era of bold sexual mores, it remains a subject that people find disturbing, embarrassing, and the reluctance to discuss it. Yet there is a growing concern about homosexuals in society, about their increasing visibility. In preparing this broadcast, CBS News commissioned a survey by the Opinion Research Corporation into public attitudes toward homosexuality. We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution. Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality. The CBS News survey shows that 2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear. 1 out of 10 says hatred. A vast majority believe that homosexuality is an illness. Only 10% say it is a crime. And yet, and here's the paradox, the majority of Americans favor legal punishment, even for homosexual acts performed in private between consenting adults. The homosexual, bitterly aware of his rejection, responds by going underground. They frequent their own clubs and bars and coffee houses where they can act out in the fashion that they want to. For the police view of homosexuality, we talked to Inspector James Fisk of the Los Angeles Police Department.
During the year of 1964, we arrested 3,000 homosexuals who committed their lewd acts in public places.
The people of Boise tried to stamp out homosexuality. When it was over 15 months later, 1 homosexual was in a state penitentiary with a life sentence. 2 received 15-year terms, 1 10 years, 2 7 years.
And homosexuality is just one of a number of such things, all tending towards the subversion, towards the final erosion of our traditional cultural values.
The dilemma of the homosexual.
Harrison with you, and as you can see, CBS. This is why the mainstream media is still so special for so many of us. Andy Sacher, I mean, that this is in millions of people's, 80, 90 million people's living room, prime time. What else are they going to think then?
It was the common knowledge at the time that homosexuals were pedophiles, and that was a huge misunderstanding. We were mentally insane. It was a really dark time for LGBT people, and you can see this in this clip. That was the consensus.
Yeah. Well, it was. I think it was politically convenient, politically expedient to have a common enemy. The communists were kind of on the wane at that point, so who better than people with a sense of humor and can do art?
And LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department, was notorious. Now, they've come full circle since then, but they had a law in the books called the masquerading law, and this would allow them to arrest anyone that is wearing an article of clothing from the opposite sex. So if a woman was wearing a man's pair of pants, she could be thrown in jail.
So Hillary Clinton would be jailed.
She would. I don't know where she gets her clothing now, but it's really sad. Or if you had a feather in your cap, you could be thrown in jail. And this happened for
much
years.
For doing Shakespeare in the Park and not ending up in the Slammer.
That's right. And basically it was profiling.
Right.
They were profiling the homosexual. We were called homophiles. They didn't even use the word homosexual.
I like homophiliac. That's
homophiles. You know, it sounds perverted.
All homosexuals are not passive. Public restrooms can often be a hangout for the homosexual. Bobby and his friends hadn't noticed the man who had been in the restroom when they changed. When Bobby recognized the stranger as the man in the restroom, the shortcut under the pier didn't seem like a good idea at all. One never knows when the homosexual is about. He may appear normal, and it may be too late when you discover he is mentally ill.
I mean, part of our mission is to demystify our existence, and the best way that I know how to do that is through video, through documentation.
It's funny, Sigmund Freud in the late 1800s came up with the word homosexual, and then in the 1920s it was in the New York Times where it then became popularized. It never existed before Freud invented it, and before then, as Gore Vidal, famously, the probably America's greatest historian, used to say, people did whatever they could get away with. That would include Alexander the Great, Pope Sixtus, you know, a lot of people throughout history.
People know Harvey Milk, people know Stonewall, but there's a lot more to the story.
Well, you know, you speak of video, Andy Sacher, and if you're joining us on the radio side of it, we're talking to Andy Sacher. He's the executive director of the Lavender Effect. You can go to the lavendereffect.org and see all of these great videos.
I am Betty DeGeneres, and I am best known for being Ellen's mother. It is so vitally important at a time when boys and girls or young people need the support and the love of their parents more than ever. To not receive it is devastating. There are far too many young men and women out on the streets just because they told their parents they're gay or lesbian or whatever they are. And it shouldn't happen at all.
I'm not the first to do this. I wouldn't claim that I'm the master of all masters, but I'm really inspired by these stories. It changed my life when I learned how influential certain people were when this was all taking place. People know Harvey Milk, people know Stonewall, but there's a lot more to the story.
So how do we find what the Lavender Effect does?
Well, you can find it on our website, which is The Lavender Effect, like the butterfly effect, only lavender.
Yes, yes.
And .org. And lavender is kind of code for queer, which is all-encompassing LGBT and all the rest. So we decided to use that code. Rock Hudson, for instance, had a lavender marriage. And that's how we identified queer marriages or anything outside the norm.
And as a matter of fact, there's a bathhouse, a sauna, if you will, a sauna, that Rock Hudson used to frequent in downtown L.A. called the Clit. Seriously, K-L-Y-T. We don't know what clit means, but it's still there, and Rock Hudson's private cubicle apparently is still there. We may take a tour there someday with you to appreciate that. I appreciate your having come in, Andy. I'm sorry I mentioned that. I just actually couldn't help myself, but I'm sure it was interesting to somebody named Mildred. Thank you so much for coming on today and for watching that CBS video with us and helping us understand that it was really profiling, something that we now see on a general level all over the country for political purposes. That being the bottom line here. And thank you for doing your good work.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, my friend. Harrison with you. Stand by. More to come.
From Hollywood, this is Harrison.
To be one of the first people to sail to Cuba in 50 years. With interior cabins for a week-long, 5-star luxury cruise ship voyage around the entire island of Cuba with multiple port calls starting at only $16.98. Be among the first in 50 years to see Cuba while it's still the Cuba that people talk about.
Is to inform viewers
who want to get to the truth within the unknown
on all topics, controversial, bizarre, and taboo.
You've taught generations how to view the world in a positive way.
Yes, I have.
I know that, and your humility is the part that's really exciting.
Interviewing movers and shakers, agitators and muckrakers.
But that doesn't answer my question. That is all I'm answering.
with me, Terry Harrison, as your guide.
This is Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, on the Progressive Radio Network in New York, and on utalk.us and various affiliates here and there. I want to talk a little bit today, and that's why we have probably the most articulate and really the greatest historian about all things LGBT.
In preparing this broadcast, CBS News commissioned a survey by the Opinion Research Corporation into public attitudes toward homosexuality. We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution.
It's straight ahead.
I want to invite you on a one-time only special trip.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth, all while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
My mission